Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to ExoticCar PlayPlace. Mark here, checking back with you, talking about reliability and our BMW M cars that unreliable. What is the reliability concerns related to a lot of the different M cars? Right here we have my great E60 M5, and if you guys have been watching YouTube lately, you'll notice Doug Demuro just recently did a video about the exact same car as this, and he talked about how it was horrifically unreliable to the point where nobody wants these cars. Everybody's running away from them. And while he admitted it is a ridiculously fun car to drive, not in his words, but of course he admitted that it was a great car to drive, particularly in a 6-speed manual transmission. He continually threw out there the fact that these cars are notoriously unreliable. And while some of that is not necessarily untrue, of course, a lot of those problems are pretty consistent through a lot of different cars, but there's a lot of very happy owners. Let's head down to the dealer and we'll talk about some of the M cars and why you would consider them to be unreliable. We'll address a bunch of different models, so let's go take a look, guys. All right. So far, this car here happens to be very reliable. We're looking at an M4. So we have a beautiful little M4. This is the new one, 3-liter turbo 6 that produces 425 horsepower. These cars are showing up to be quite reliable, although there are some cases where they're saying there's crank hub issues in the engine. So basically an engine's coming undone inside, and that has been a case in some situations. It's not widespread yet, but there have been some known cases of that. Otherwise, the Apple CarPlay is a little slow, and beyond that, everything's really well dialed in with these cars. Very reliable so far. Then we have the brand new F90 M5. Sorry about the snow, guys, but hey, it's winter here in Alberta. What can you say? But this car here so far has the 600 horsepower twin turbo 4.4 liter V8 that produces about 600 horsepower. Now, because it's connected to a ZF automatic transmission, these cars are proving to be a lot more reliable, more drivable, and so far, not a lot of reports on reliability concerns related to this new M5. Although I know it's a fairly new car, but it's already been out for a couple of years, and there's no gleaming issues. So as you can tell, some of the new cars here now, of course, are getting better with time. M5. And what do we have here? This one here, wow. Too bad it's covered in snow. I might have to come take a look at this another day. We have an awesome M6, new one. This is a matte. If you look at it, it's sort of a matte black finish. What an amazing color. You can only see it in certain light, but look at that, guys. Man, I love that color. M6. Covered in snow. I'll come back another day when this is cleaned up. Beautiful. Again, it uses that twin turbo V8. Great engine so far. Then over here we have, what do we have? The E90 M3. We've talked about this one before, and again, pardon the snow, but this one here is the 4-liter V8. This car here is known for rod bearings, just like the E60 M5, the one that we just left. The E60 M5 and the E90 M3 share more or less the basic underpinnings. They utilize similar bearing rods. I mean, this is just basically 2 cylinders shaved off of the M5. And so these have rod bearing issues. These also have throttle actuator problems. Aside from that, very robust cars, very reliable everywhere else. I mean, the car is well dialed in otherwise. Now we move along. We've got a few other cars down here. What do we have right here, guys? We have, this is an F10 M5. So this is the predecessor to the E60. Now again, apologize for the snow, but these cars here, so this has a 4.4 liter V8, which is sort of a detuned version of the current M5 engine. But these cars were quite reliable, other than the simple fact that they had a few issues. You'd sometimes get the drivetrain malfunction codes. If you happen to over rev it briefly, these would spit out a code, and it usually had to do with fueling or a lack of fueling under the high RPM, high load conditions. So that was one common problem with these cars. Another issue were, in some cases, you would have squeaky brakes. A lot of owners were complaining of squeaky brakes for the M5. Really squeaky brakes. That was a pain in the rump for some people. They didn't like that very much. Aside from that, it was a very reliable car. It didn't have a lot of problems in the F10. And then what do we have over here? E46, guys. I know a lot of you guys, fanboys out there, love these cars. The E46. What is not to love about an E46? Look at the color of this thing, too. This amazing looking purple color. It's a beautiful car. M3. This almost makes me want to buy one of these. Honestly, it's old school, it's simple, but it's honest. These are awesome cars. Look at the back end. Tailpipes, you've got the quad pipes down there. Love this color. It's just an amazing color. Great rims on here. So these cars here were actually pretty good, but again, remember they had Vanos issues, cooling issues, and you had other issues with these cars surrounding the rear subframe. So the rear subframe issues would creep in, where you'd have structural issues where it would start to crack and split because of age, you know, wear and tear and general fatigue, and you'd get the back end subframe would crack apart. You actually have to watch for that, and that was something that you'd have to get re-welded or reinforced at some point. Of course, Vanos issues you get in these cars as well. That's not uncommon with a lot of the variable valve timing type cars like this with the Vanos. That was an issue. Cooling problems. Also, do not get the SMG. What is this one? This one here is an SMG transmission. Generally, as a rule, I stay away from the SMGs because you get SMG pump issues and the hydraulics and the issues associated with hydraulic systems in the SMG transmissions. Stick with the manual 6-speed. It'll last a lot longer, it'll be a simpler life, and you'll have less problems all in all. And then guys, what do we have over here? We have an X5 M. Beautiful car, of course. Look at the front touches on there. You've got some carbon fiber lip at the bottom. Pretty nice looking machine. The nicer dial-in headlights. This is obviously newer than my E70, but still an older generation. Of course, you can tell the body style is the older gen M5 or X5M. Beautiful car nonetheless. But these were fairly reliable with the twin turbo V8 in these cars, but the only thing that you had to consider was fuel injectors, PCV valves. There was issues in vacuum lines, PCV lines. Of course, the fuel injectors, I believe there was a recall on that. So check into it if you're looking at these. The fuel injectors themselves would fail. Sometimes they would leak down, and often what they would do is they would pool fuel in the cylinders and basically fill up cylinders. You can wash the cylinders and destroy an engine pretty quick. So it had fueling issues, you know, leaking down injectors, and I believe that again was a recall for these. So the X5M, although it was fairly reliable and very powerful, a fun car to drive, look for those recalls. Fuel injectors, vacuum lines, and of course the usual gambit of, you know, valve cover leaks, turbos. Those things are not uncommon, and because it's a 5 Series or X5, it's certainly got its share of complexity in electronics. Those are also possible failure points. But these were actually quite reliable. Like I said, watch for that fuel injection and vacuum lines. That's the big one you want to watch for there. So this great X5M, these were actually a beautiful car to drive. Lots of power. You've got the quad exhaust down below as well. Just a beautiful machine all the way around. This would be a nice keeper, I gotta say. I would drive one of these. Maybe you don't like some of the reliability concerns that you find in an E46 M3 or an E90 M3, or how about an E60 M5 or an F10 or an F90? How about an M4 or M3 in the current generation? Maybe you don't like that stuff, but you want a sporting sedan. What other options do you have? Well, here's another one for you. So here we are at the Lexus dealer now. That's the other brand that everybody seems to be referring to when it comes to talk about reliability and comparing to the BMW brand. But a lot of great cars coming out of Lexus here. I must admit, there's some really, really great cars like this one. Look at this thing. Wow. What a beautiful car. Holy smokes. What is this? LC 500, wow. Holy, love it. But beside the odd car like that, the majority of the brand, you have to ask yourself, does it invoke passion? And that's a question that I have, because Doug referred to on paper. On paper, a lot of cars do a lot of great things, and a lot of these BMWs can be countered by cars that are, how we say, maybe even better performers on paper, more reliable on paper. But you know what? Owning some of these high performance cars like an E60 M5 or an M4 that's highly tuned, something that is really high strung, is like being married to a supermodel. In essence, really what it is, it's a passion thing. It has highs, it has lows. When you have passion, you basically have something that is not always positive, but it always invokes emotion. And that's what the BMW brands do. You get behind the wheel of an E60 M5, when you put the foot into it in M mode, none of the BS about rod bearings seems to even matter. You put your foot into it and all you can do is smile from ear to ear like a Cheshire cat, and all you have is a situation where your boy parts are jingling and your girl parts are tingling, and it is just an amazing ride. So there's no quantifying reliability and performance and desire to own these cars. It really boils down to what tickles your fancy, and on paper isn't always the way that it has to be, because again, on paper there's a lot of great cars out there, but when you get behind the wheel, that's what matters. And that's what driving an M car like an M5, E60 M5 or an M4, some of these cars that don't make sense on paper because they're not reliable, does not mean that's not the car to own. If in fact that jingles your parts, that is the car to own. Can you afford it is the bigger question. But in terms of, do you tolerate those kind of things? Do we tolerate a supermodel's high and low and passionate emotions if you're married to one? I mean, those are things you don't get rid of them just because they have a bad day. It's one of those things you accept for the long haul. If that's what floats your boat, that's the way it's got to be. So thanks again, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks Doug for inspiring this discussion. It's a great discussion to have, of course. I know there's a lot of emotion around these kind of things and what is really the best car, and are M cars in fact reliable? And I would say a lot of them are, but even if they're not, that doesn't mean don't buy them. You buy what floats your boat. So thanks again, everybody. Make sure you give me a thumbs up, like, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to get a bunch of my new merch. You'll notice in the link down below. Get it while it's hot. So thanks again, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.